Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. We're into July, the month which is often associated with the highest temperatures of the year in the United Kingdom. So, are there any signs of a heat wave as we head through the next 2 weeks? I'll take a look at the prospects in a moment, but firstly, I just wanted to say something about June, because it was quite unusual by recent standards at least. In fact, it was the first month since December 2022 to record a central England temperature slightly below the 1961-90 average. On the table here, you can see that it was the 6th coolest June of the 21st century so far, and the anomaly when compared to 1961-1990 was 0.1 Celsius, so just a fraction below that average, but noteworthy nonetheless, as I say, because it's the first month since December 2022 to have a negative anomaly. Well, coming back to the here and now, and I'll start with the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. The animation runs from 18 GMT, Tuesday the 2nd, and at the outset, this does not look particularly summery. We've got an Atlantic flow pushing across all parts of the UK, a weak ridge of high pressure air trying to build up from the southwest, but it's not a settled setup. Do things change? Well, as I run the sequence, what we see is the Atlantic remains dominant really. Showers or long spells of rain, mostly in the north and the west to start off with, but as we head through Friday, this nasty looking area of low pressure pushes across the southern half of the UK. It brings the likelihood of more persistent and perhaps some heavy outbreaks of rain. GFS, which this sequence is based on, has a tendency, I think, to overstate the extent of a rain risk and also show it being heavier than the actual outcome is often. But with that said, the general pattern is being well supported by a number of other computer model runs. So I think there is a risk of some fairly heavy rain in southern and central regions for a time on Friday. Now, as I run this through to conclusion, what we see is things stay quite mixed. Further showers or longer spells of rain. There are changes taking place, though. Winds are going into more of a southwesterly direction. That means there is the potential for temperatures to start rising towards the end of the first week. But even at the finish here, the low pressure still has the upper hand. It's quite a changeable or unsettled looking pattern. The jet stream sequence helps to explain what's taking place as well. At the outset here, the jet stream's making a beeline for the UK. The mottled shaded area shows where it is. As I run it, it doesn't go anywhere fast in the short term, but through the second half of the week, there's some signs here of it buckling and much warmer air being pulled up ahead of it from the south to southwest. But as I said, low pressure is still close by. If it's warm, sunny and settled conditions, which you're hoping for, and I think at this time of the year many people are, the jet stream should really be heading much further to the northwest than is being shown. So just a few surface charts to indicate the conditions that we can expect if those sequences are correct. This is Wednesday the 3rd. A few showers around, but also a lot of dry weather. Temperatures on the low side though for early July. Just 18 Celsius there in the south. Although GFS has had a tendency recently to undershoot by a couple of degrees, so maybe up to 20, 21 in the southeastern corner there. Forwards to a Friday. We've got the outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards across southern and central regions. As I've said, some of those could be quite heavy, but keep an eye on the short range forecasts because the details could still change significantly. And then into the weekend, Sunday the 7th, showers or longer spells of rain across most of the UK, temperatures remaining on the low side, so it's quite a changeable pattern at this point. How do the rainfall totals look as we head through the first 10 days? Well, these are the aggregates for days 0 to 5. The one on the left is from the ECM model, on the right the GFS. The highest totals generally in the north and the west, still quite small amounts there in the far southeast, especially on the GFS chart, but rain in all parts of the UK as I've been discussing. Moving forwards to the 0 to 10 day aggregates, totals have continued climbing, over 100 millimetres there in the northwest according to the ECM. GFS a little bit lower there in most parts of the UK, but the general distribution of rain is very similar between the two models. Even the southeastern corner seeing significant amounts, particularly if the ECM is correct. In more general terms, how do the deterministic models compare with each other as we head towards the end of the first week? This is the GFS, which the animations were based on. Tuesday the 9th of July, low pressure air just sitting to the west. We do have that warmer air feeding up from the southwest, particularly into central and eastern counties of England, but it's quite an unsettled or at least changeable pattern. The Canadian model also has low pressure just to the west, very similar. There are some differences in the details, but overall it's quite mixed. Moving forwards to the German icon, low pressure here. The warm air there really staying more to the east. The European ECM, there are a few differences with this one. The low pressure air just anchored a little bit further to the west perhaps, and a weak ridge of high pressure over the low countries, allowing some warm air to feed northwards, but the pattern is still a changeable one. Finally, the UK Met Office Global. This has low pressure and the warm air not really reaching the UK. I think taking them all together, there are significant differences in the details, but the general theme is for it to be changeable or unsettled, showers or long spells of rain, a chance of some warm air pushing up into central and eastern parts of England in particular. That could, of course, trigger off some thundery conditions with low pressure being close by. Do things remain mixed as we head through week 2? Of course, it's just about the trends and the probabilities at this range, as I always emphasise, and I use the ensemble data to try and identify those rather than the deterministic model runs. So starting with the 16-day GEFS plot for London, what we see across the top is the average there. The thick purple line is close to the thick black line, the 30-year norm. So these, of course, are temperatures at about 1,500 metres above sea level. It looks fairly typical for the time of year. There isn't really a signal here at all for heat wave conditions to develop. There are just 1 or 2 runs further down the line there, which bring in much warmer air towards the end of the second week. But all in all, most of the individual runs shown by the different lines there are fluctuating around that 30-year norm. Quite different to what we've seen in a number of recent years, actually, where we've often had very, very warm pulses of upper level air moving across the UK, at least into the south. The rain risk continues through week 2. There are a fair number of spikes there. It doesn't look particularly wet, but showers or long spells of rain definitely remain a possibility even in the south if this is right. The 2 metre temperatures, the shade of orange dominates. It's runs which are forecasting maximums of between 21 and 25. There is some red showing up there. It's staying in the minority, 26 to 30 Celsius. So a chance, there were a few runs, as I said, which bring in warmer air, but it doesn't really look like there's any signal here at all at this stage for a heat wave. Just a little bit of a pinky red towards the end there, 1 or 2 runs which are showing values rising above 30 Celsius. But as I say, just 1 or 2 out of a total of 33, so a very, very small minority. Up to Manchester, the general pattern is similar, although there are more rain spikes there across the bottom half of the plot. It is quite a wet picture. 2 metre temperatures for Manchester, a little bit lower than the London ones, of course, but generally a similar trend there through week 2. Not a great deal changing. Up to Glasgow, and it's more of the same, although the trend towards having more rain spikes as we head northwards continues, and it's quite a wet picture through the second week. And the temperatures down at the ground level, the 2 metre ones, are lower than Manchester, which were lower than London. The orange, which is dominant, is indicating maximums of 16 to 20, and the nighttime lows there across the bottom are lower than they were in Manchester and London, 6 to 10 being typical for much of the second week. These are the rainfall probability charts for the first 3 days of week 2. The yellows, oranges and reds indicate a chance of between 60 to 100% of 1 millimetre or more of rain falling. So the general theme here is for the wettest conditions to be in the north and the west, drier in the southeast, perhaps East Anglia, and then on the last chart there, day 10, maybe more widely across central and eastern parts of Britain. Forwards to the following 3 days, not a great deal change. It's perhaps a signal for drier conditions there in central and eastern counties, but it could just be ensemble spread at this range. All in all, it looks like quite a mixed picture. And the 10-day GEFS mean surface level pressure plot just reinforces the message. This is generated by averaging out all the individual runs in the model. It's for Friday the 12th of July. We have the Azores high pressure sitting over the Azores, staying away from the UK. Low pressure air close to the west. There is a signal perhaps for warmer air to be feeding into the southeast, East Anglia, maybe more widely into eastern Britain. All in all though, a changeable or unsettled theme. And the mean surface level pressure data table for York, which goes through week 2, doesn't really change things much. Not a signal for pressure to be rising or falling. The amount of yellow in these columns stays roughly the same on each of the days, as does the green. The green is indicating a low pressure dominated scenarios. The yellow is more mixed. Some of those are a little bit above the average pressure, some are below it. But taking that together with the mean surface level pressure data plot from the GEFS, it does not look like a high pressure dominated scenario. Therefore, settled, warm and dry conditions at this point are not favoured. So, to summarise, week 1, it's changeable with showers or longer outbreaks of rain. There's that risk of more persistent rain pushing across the southern half of the UK on Friday, so keep up to date with the short range forecasts. Often rather cool for early July, but it could turn warmer later on, particularly in central and eastern counties. Week 2, the unsettled theme remains in place, so all regions could see showers or even longer outbreaks of rain, but the best of the dry periods are likely to be in the south. Temperatures close to or perhaps slightly above the norm overall. There is a chance though of warm and humid spells in eastern and perhaps central parts of the UK. So there we have it. It's a very mixed picture as we head through the first half of July. An ongoing risk of showers or longer spells of rain, rather cool to start off with, but then the chance of it turning warmer, particularly in the east where it may become humid and thundery. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video as usual and found it helpful. If you did, then please remember to hit the like button below. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you've not done so already, so you won't miss future releases. But don't forget as well to stay up to date with the day-to-day weather developments by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks very much now. Bye.